Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jodielynn.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Now, those of you who are tuning in because you're expecting that we're going to be meeting with Catherine Gerard today, she was looking forward to it. She actually said, "Where's the link?" I sent her the link yesterday, and then she sent me an email today. "Oh, something horrible's come up. I have to go take care of this. I'm so sorry." And I was remembering that Jodielynn, we had a guest join us last November, who afterwards she had so much fun. She sent me an email and said, "If you ever want me to come back again, or you need another co-host or something, let me know." I said, "All right, yeah, I'll keep that in mind." And then she occurred to me like, "Oh yeah, I should reach out to her." So I reached out. I mean, no, this was earlier today, right? So there wasn't a whole lot of warning, not a whole lot of time lapsed here. I sent out an email. Within an hour, she writes back, "Yeah, sure, I'll be glad to do that." And then we misconnected on the time. So she's sitting in the studio waiting for us while we're not even here for another hour, you know. And so I sent, once we get here, where is she? I don't know. So I sent her an email and she shows up 5 minutes later. I mean, Jodielynn, this is a lady who just shows up. She's there on the spot when you need her. That's reliable. You know, that's like super reliable. You don't get that anymore.
It's true.
So Sophie Delorier, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us and being a part of this conversation that we had no idea what we were going to talk about before we got started. But then you broached an idea literally seconds before we hit the start button. Why don't you tell people what the idea is and we'll just take it from there.
Well, lately what's been coming up in my world is talking about what it's like to make transitions when you're a woman in midlife. So somewhere between your 40s and 60s, like the decades of 40, the decades of 50s. And it's a really challenging time for a woman in that age because most oftentimes she's created some particular results for herself. You know, some women have been massively successful, advanced in their career, married, not married, long-term relationship, kids. And there's all these types of transitions that happen. You know, she could have a relationship issue. Let's start with saying when you hit that age, you start to have what I have rephrased as a happiness crisis. Some people call it as a midlife crisis. Some people call it a healing crisis. I'm going to call it a happiness crisis. Okay. And the reason I'm going to call it a happiness crisis is because you start to have these existential questions you're asking yourself. It's like, what am I doing with my life now? What do I want? Who am I? What's my identity? For myself, I was married for 18 years and it was just like, is that the relationship I want for myself? And so there was changes I needed to make in that part of my life. I was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was going through a divorce at the same time at the age of 43, which was a health crisis for me. And I walked away from a thriving business, it wasn't a financial crisis because I was taken care of, but my money situation had changed. And so women are going through all of that. And then they're becoming empty nesters with their kids leaving the home. Right. And one of the biggest reasons it's such a challenge is because it's now we're navigating the unknown. And she has experience of creating success and experience with failure, the best teacher.
Yeah.
And so now she has to dig deep to find the courage, the motivation, the desire to take that leap of faith to produce a completely different life, to create a completely different life for herself. And that right there, that pivotal moment is, does she stay where she's at and stay unhappy, stay stuck, doesn't want to disappoint someone, doesn't want to rock the boat, doesn't want to shake shit up? Or does she like go for it? That is like, I'm finding is what a lot of women my age are struggling with.
Interesting you describe it that way. I would be really hesitant to say whether or not men go through something similar. I know I went through something similar, but I'm not so sure that's true for all men. So I'm hesitant to go that far with it. What I will say, though, is as we move through life, all of us, to one degree or another, experience various kinds of crises. I mean, that's a theme that shows up here over and over again, right, Jodielynn? We talk about people who come on, they have dark nights of the soul. They have terrible things that they go through, you know, horrible relationship crashes or financial crashes or health crashes or whatever, you know, all kinds of stuff that just falls apart. And then, as you say, Sophie, that becomes the growth moment. That's when you have the most to grow through. It's also the crappiest time. But when you come out the other side and you look back, you say, whoa, I wouldn't trade that for anything. Which, by the way, is something that I have found to be fascinating since the first time that was proposed to me about 10 years ago by my friend Joel Elston, who said, like those are the best things. And I said, are you crazy? But he's right.
Well, it's where you find your meaning and purpose, I think, because up until that point, I mean, I'm going to generalize here, but from what I'm noticing and what I'm observing is the reason you have some sort of happiness crisis or whatever crisis you want to call it, is because you have unfulfillment and a void in your heart. And there's a yearning inside your soul that wants to create fulfillment and purpose and meaning and connection. And so I don't think the more you resist that, the more you're going to create tension for yourself and your body and in your mindset. And it comes to a point when it just all comes to a head, because I do believe that your soul overrides what you've already accomplished in your life, or what direction you think you want to go. And the soul wants to be expressed. And so when you go through that, you have to reevaluate who you are as a human being. What's important to you? What are your thoughts? What are your beliefs? Is all of this stuff that society has told you as a woman or a man true? Should women be prioritizing the needs of others before their own? Should a man be the provider and make all the money and like suppress his feelings and not be emotional or compassion or show nurture? Like, is that the way it should be? So you get to a point where you question everything, and then you put yourself back together. And when you put yourself back together, you do so with the intention of, this chapter of my life is going to be about fulfillment and fun and pleasure and enjoyment. And without that breakdown, that crisis, you may never have been forced to create that for yourself. And so when you come through the other side, you don't come through without getting your happy or your fulfillment or your joy, because you're just like, there's no way I'm going through that without making sure that I get what I want on the other side of it.
I don't know why, but there's an old song that just keeps, the chorus keeps going through my mind. The chorus is that all there is?
Yeah.
Is that all there is? I mean, that's what we're talking about. Is that all there is?
Yeah. Is this all there is? Is this the meaning to life? Is there more? Is this like, am I saying everything I want to say? Am I doing everything I want to do? Like, this is like, what's the point? Is this all there is? And what's the point?
Yeah. Now, Jodielynn, you're not quite at the age range that she's talking about, but you're creeping up on it. What's your take from that side of things?
How old are you, Jodielynn?
I'm at 39 this year.
Oh.
Yeah. I feel like I've been going through an existential crisis. Like in my early 20s, I went through one. In my early 30s, I went through one.
Well, you don't waste any time is what it is. I mean, you just jump right in.
Yeah, exactly. COVID was a big one for me when COVID hit. I started really diving down a lot of rabbit holes, and I was thinking, is that all there is? My first ectopic pregnancy, which was a year before that, I was already on that, path of, is this all there is? Is this what life is supposed to be? What is the meaning of life? So I feel like I've dabbled definitely in there and like deconstructed and stuff. So I was just mulling over that question. Is it age? Again, this question came up with politics, but is it age or is it the collective or is it a combination of the two? I don't know. But I definitely think that that's something that we as humans go through, and maybe multiple different times throughout our lives.
Yeah. Sophie, just to cue you into, Sophie, and our audience too, just before you joined us in the back room, Jodielynn and I were chatting, and she was pointing out how, she had never really paid attention to politics except in the last 5 or 10 years, and wondered, is that something that's been going on? And I think it probably is. For me, it's not, because I was a political science major in school, but I think it's probably that's an example of something where people are looking at something they never really looked at before. They're learning. I mean, you were describing, Jodielynn. You were telling me how you didn't even know what a Republican or a Democrat was. What makes them that, other than it's a party label, And now all of a sudden you've not all of a sudden you've educated yourself. You've learned more about it. You've taken an interest in it. I think a lot of people were doing that. They just they decided that can't be all there is. I'm going to learn more. And I don't think it matters what the topic is. It doesn't have to be politics. It could be anything. I think ultimately that's what life is deciding what's next.
Well, and I think you get your life force from first of all, making the decision, because the decision indicates that you feel you deserve it, you're worth it, you're going for it. And then you start taking aligned action with it. And when you are choosing the thought that's in alignment with your dreams, and then you're feeling the way it would feel to have that dream now, and then you're taking actions in alignment with that, that energy right there is the energy of courage and leadership, excitement and passion. And that's the energy that produces illogical results. That's the energy that's where the magic is. That's when that's when the universe steps up and like it partners with you and performs, right? So and I think there's not lots, but there's many more leaders speaking about that, like Joe Dispenza, and there's like many of us talking about quantum leaps and the quantum field and potentiality and, you know, possibility and what it is to like align with that. So it sounds easy, you know, think the right thoughts, feel the right feelings, take the right actions, but then your emotions get in the way.
Oh, wait a minute. You want this to be easy?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did actually. I did.
Yeah, me too, actually, to be perfectly honest.
No, I did. I didn't want to have to feel all those uncomfortable feelings. And that's the sad thing, is that many are not going. There's two things. Many are not going for it because they have felt failure. They understand it comes with uncomfortable feelings. They know that if it doesn't work out for them, there's no guarantee in life. They're going to feel those uncomfortable feelings. So they're protecting themselves from the heartbreak of disappointment, which leads to regrets, which I'm not sure is the better way to go.
Actually, I'm sure it's not the better way.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
100% certain.
Exactly. So then the other alternative choice is to go for it. And, you know, I've just created it like this for myself. The cost to play to get your dreams now is you're going to have to feel some emotions. Like maybe you're going to have to go through the fear of failing or the fear of being embarrassed or the fear of being judged. But you got to let all that go to get to the other side of it. And then when you do, like that's freedom, because you don't like, as crass as this may sound, is you just don't care like about anything external. External validation now has zero power.
And those that fear no longer has power over you either, because you've already been through the worst of the worst and it didn't kill you. It made you stronger. You know, it wasn't as bad as you perceived it would be. So you've taken your power back in that regard too.
That's right. And added the fact that when you go through that, you've been through it a few times, it's easier and easier each time that you are facing that. But the really odd part is, you know, it's easier. You've been through it enough times that you know it's easier, and you still have to talk yourself into it. Once you do, it's amazing how quickly you blow through it. But until then, for that instant of time, it seems endlessly impossible to get through it. Even though you know you've been through it before and it won't take all that long, it still seems that way.
Yeah, and if you don't make that decision quickly, in my opinion, you get stuck there.
Oh, yeah.
Because then the mind spirals into a negative thought loop. And if you can't pull yourself out of your own negative thought loop, which many of the strong, like, it doesn't matter how strong you are, you could get trapped there.
For sure.
Yeah,
well, actually, I think that's why we get trapped there. We are strong. We just don't realize what our own strength is. We're actually really good at this. So good at this that we're firmly the crap.
We're firmly sitting in the I'm not doing it.
That's right.
I'm staying right here.
Yeah, or completely committed to the no.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Not possible. Yeah.
I'm always fascinated by how people will stick to something that is actually against their own self-interest. But they'll stick to it and stick to it and stick to it. And then they'll conclude, after they've stuck to it for a long time, and they finally make a shift, they'll ask themselves, why am I so weak? And all I can think is, look how strong you were. You held on to the bitter end. How can you say you're weak? Oh, my goodness. That takes tremendous commitment to stick to something that really doesn't serve you.
That's such a good point that I don't think is highlighted enough, is like the commitment and the strength it takes to have the thorn in your side and to leave it there rather than like pull the thorn out and go do what feels good.
Yeah.
We're just so conditioned to feel bad.
We are.
Yeah, totally.
Which is the issue with women, you know, because we've been conditioned in my age group, we've been conditioned our entire lives to prioritize the needs of others, you know, to not speak our truth, to not use our voice, to not have boundaries. So I'm going to go as far as to assert that I don't think that women in my age group have been feeling good for long. Like, we haven't been taught that that's the dominant choice to make. So
And I think a lot of society is like that too, of, like, we have been taught to choose like the steady path, the known way, go to school, get a good job, have a pension, like get married, have kids.
That last is laughable. Does anybody have a good pension anymore? I mean, does that even exist?
It's very few and far between.
Yeah, like there's government jobs and healthcare positions, I think, here in Canada that do provide that. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's good. I don't know what good is. I never had that for myself, but yeah, it's a good point, Jodielynn.
Yeah.
I've also known so many people who lost their pensions, so that's the other piece of it. I mean,
yeah, that's
how good is it if you have it and it goes away? It's like, okay, what'd you have?
Yeah,
it's hard to know.
Yeah, what you're talking about, Jodielynn, for me, like that's like conforming to societal expectations, and that the ability to face a societal norm or a stereotype and just say, no, I'm going to march to the beat of my own drum is more apparent or prevalent now. Like, there's a whole paradigm shift. There's more people living in that paradigm now, I believe, than ever. And there's more women in that paradigm now more than ever. Like, I just posted something on my Instagram yesterday, actually. I saw that it was like the 50-year anniversary that a woman could get a credit card without the signature of a man. Like, it's only 50 years that women could get independent financing outside of being attached to a male. Like,
I didn't realize it was that long, actually. I thought it was less than that.
Oh, yeah? 50 years? Yeah. I didn't find 50 years to be very long. I was actually shocked.
That is crazy.
That's like my lifetime. I'll be 48 in May, right? Like, so, like, let's just say for as long as I've been born is the only, like, that's the time frame women have had access to financial independence,
My husband's grandma was the first woman in their area. They lived just outside of Toronto. That she was the first woman who had her driver's license.
Oh my.
In that like entire area. And he was telling me stories about how his grandfather's friends were like, what are you doing? Why would you get our driver's license? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, are you kidding me? Like, this is amazing. Now she can go grocery shopping.
Yeah, right.
She can go get the kids and she can go do this and that. And they had a market garden business and, all of that. So he's like, this is amazing. And he saw that value. But it's crazy that, that was his grandparents. His grandma was the first woman in that area to get a driver's license. It's not that long ago.
I think what you're saying is brilliant. Why would a man want to disempower a woman to get certain liberties when it's only going to enhance his life? That is the pure definition of control and power, in my opinion.
Well, it's also the definition of insanity.
Yeah.
Let's be perfectly honest. That's what that is.
Yeah. That too. Let's just take it to like that. It's like misogynistic. It's like, like that. Like, it's just, thank you. Like, she's now going to be in a position to make your life easier, really. Like, yeah. I think that's a brilliant point where you're bringing up, Jodielynn. I don't think it gets highlighted enough.
No.
And I'll tell you honestly, when I was growing up, I was like everybody, but particularly as a male, I was schooled in what it is to be a male, and none of it made any sense to me.
Yeah, like what? I'd be curious to hear.
Like all of it. Like nothing made any sense. And even now, as I read history of what was happening before I was born and so forth, I look at it and I said, were they just crazy? What was going on in their heads? I know. I mean, I do understand. I understand how generational things are, and I understand how cultures are, and so forth. But when I look at it from the point of view of the people who are involved, all I can think is, you guys, you people be crazy. You're just nuts. Because that's what it was. It was nuts.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it still is to a certain extent. There's a lot of improvement that has happened, but there's also still a lot that's just, it's head scratching material. Some of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's Absolutely. Like we're conditioned to be disconnected from each other.
Yes.
Ourselves, we're conditioned to be disconnected from ourselves, our intuition, our inner knowing, our gut feelings, the intuitive nudges that we get, which robs us of our self-trust, which keeps us dependent on the system.
Yeah.
Well, here's looking outside of ourselves. Yeah.
Say that again, Jodielynn.
And looking outside of ourselves, like the
Mhm.
answer is out there. Someone else has to tell me what is right for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
we're constantly looking outside of ourselves for that answer.
Right.
And it's, you know, like a self-fulfilling prophecy that it will be wrong because it's not you. It's not your soul calling you, which is nuts.
There's
Well,
a current example of it that I think really illustrates it nicely. It's the medical system. And I don't care which country we're talking about. I mean, I'm in the U.S., so I'm in a sense talking about the U.S. medical system. But it really applies to almost any Western medical system you can think of. And what it comes down to, now I'm going to describe it from the American perspective because that's the one that I know. But here in the U.S., back circa 1910, I don't remember exactly what the exact year was, there was a report that was written by an educator at the behest of one of the big millionaire families, the Rockefellers, or I don't remember who it was, but somebody founded or funded to have this guy write this report. And this report became the basis for what is current modern mainstream medicine. And the essence of his report was to criticize the way medicine had been treated up to that point, which was more holistic, but it was also more, it was less rigorously scientific.
Yeah.
And he said, we have to make it more rigorously scientific. And it led to a whole slew of changes that ultimately created the modern medical systems of the world today. There was a documentary I saw recently, and I don't remember exactly what the documentary was about, but it had something to do with medicine. And one of the doctors who appeared in it made the point that this was a significant step forward in medicine that also had the unexpected result of disconnecting us from our own doctors.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Meaning that the doctors were basically encouraged to think about their patients scientifically rather than as patients.
Right, as people.
As people.
Yeah. More like numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how do you get somebody's emotional body included in that diagnosis when you see them as a number?
Right.
And yet, look what that's creating in terms, I mean, that's creating huge numbers of problems within the current modern medical system.
Yeah, I can share with you when I got diagnosed with cancer and they wanted to give me my treatment protocol. I wasn't a candidate for chemo, but I was a candidate for 25 radiation treatments and 2 years of tamoxifen. And I asked that specific question to the radiologist. I'm like, so if I do 25 treatments, you're telling me I'm going to have a 15% benefit, which means you're going to reduce my chances by 15%. I said, but what happens if I change my diet, change my lifestyle, work on my fears, work on my thoughts, and, all those things that aren't coming to mind to say right now. But what if I change all that? And she goes, no, we don't take that into consideration.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's a lot of evidence now. Like, I'm not of the I was diagnosed in a time in our lives where there's so much evidence that talks about how the emotional body you can heal those kinds of ailments. And just even entertaining the conversation would have been interesting for me, but no, she kind of actually just walked out of the room. She's like, this is your treatment protocol. And there I go.
Yeah. And did they get mad at you that you were like, no, I don't want to do it?
No, what happened was I spoke to my oncologist after the radiologist, and I didn't connect with her. So I didn't go back to her. And I said, I'd like to understand what the percentage is, like what's the risk I have that cancer comes back if I do nothing. He's like, well, that's a completely different spreadsheet. I'm like, well, could I get that spreadsheet, please?
Good question.
Well, and I feel so heartbroken for people who don't have the English skills, the questioning skills. Think about when you hear cancer, right? Like your brain that fear, just
terrifying. I can hardly imagine, but yeah.
To be able to connect the dots and to process. So he gets the sheet, and so I'm supposed to do this treatment, which is going to reduce my chances by 15%. I had a 30% chance it would come back. This is going to reduce it by 15%, right? He goes, if you do nothing, don't change my lifestyle, nothing, you have an 89% chance cancer doesn't come back systemically. And then in 5 years, it goes down to 82. And then in 5 years like this, and then like that. And I said, oh gosh, I don't understand. Am I crazy? Can you help me with my thinking here? Does it make, I feel like I got pretty good odds not to do treatment. And he's like, right? And he's like, well, Sophie, I can get behind your thinking because if it came back locally, we would just take the lump out again. And you have like an 89% chance it's not going to come back systemically. So I understand your line of thought and I understand your choices and I could get behind it. But we don't advocate for that. Like, I was like, why don't you even present it as an option? He's like, because we want to keep you safe. And some people, they do yeah, right. And I'm like, there's some people do chemotherapy for a 1% benefit, like to reduce. Yeah, and some women do a double mastectomy when they had the same diagnosis as I did, because it's the amount of fear that they're so scared that it's going to come back. They would rather just deal with that now and then never have to deal with that again. And yet nobody's talking about. No, I shouldn't say it like that. There are lots of people talking about how when you deal with your emotions, you deal with your unprocessed trauma, when you deal with all that stuff, there's a clearing that happens in the body and a healing, and it can be more successful than modern treatment.
Absolutely.
There's a way that I like to describe to myself this is they. We talk about they did this, they said that, right? And in this case, the they. Who is the they in medicine?
Right.
Well, I generically describe that as mainstream medicine.
Right.
But there's also another term I came up with. Well, actually, I didn't come up with this one. AI came up with this one. I was interacting with an AI, and I was asking questions about medical stuff and probing, doing the kind of probing that you were doing with your radiologist and your oncologist and so forth. I was doing probing and kind of pushing the boundaries, saying, okay, yeah, I get what you're saying, but let's put that aside and let's look at this and all that kind of thing. And got the AI to agree that, yeah, there are other sides to the debate and so forth. And then at one point I said, it's really odd how this mainstream medicine thing has, it's basically pushed us into this one mindset. I wonder if there's like a mythology. Is there like AI? Is there like a mythological character that would be a perfect name for mainstream medicine? And it said, yeah, I can think of one. I said, what is it? It said Panopticon. I said, what?
What's that?
Panopticon. Panopticon is the name of a series of letters that was written by the British philosopher Jeremy Bentham back in the 1700s. He was writing on the topic of prison reform, because the idea was, why is it that we have so many people in prison and they just seem to be people who are recidivists? They get out, they create crime again. What can we do to reform the prison system? His letters about Panopticon were designed to do exactly that. And the gist of it was this. You need to have not just jailers, but you need to have jailers who are paying attention to what's going on. And who are kind of like, they're trying to guide the prisoners into a more morally acceptable framework and so forth. And he laid out a whole series of strictures about how you accomplish that. Well, it captured the imagination of the peoples of the West, particularly in Britain at that time. And they started to implement it. And what they implemented, we now call it the workhouses. That was the result of Panopticon. So this idealistic vision that Bentham laid out became one of the worst tragedies and travesties ever created by the West. In other words, good intention led to horrible results.
That's sad.
And I realized that the mythological choice that the AI had made actually made sense, because Panopticon was, we are the overseers who are going to guide you to a better place. Which is exactly what mainstream medicine is claiming to do.
Yeah.
Be the overseers to guide you to a better place.
Yeah. And where are they leading us to? They're not leading us to a better place.
Yeah. I think that mainstream medicine has a purpose. There are surgeries that need to happen. People break their legs. You're not going to be able to forgive somebody and get your leg fixed. Like, that just, well, not that I know of. And it's important. That's important. That's important.
Of course. Yeah. If I break my leg, I want to have a Western doctor fixing it.
And it's ignorant not to take into consideration that there are other thought processes. And it's, in my opinion, it's narcissistic.
In a sense, yeah, it is.
Like, right? You'd be so omnipotent.
Omnipotent, yeah. Panopticon. That's the more I thought about that phrase, that word really describes it.
Right.
Because it kind of brings to mind the old image of the kindly old doctor who's there to care for you and to give you the advice you need to follow, and you always follow the doctor's advice because the doctor always knows best. That's Panopticon.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's like, if it's not the doctor knows best, it's mother knows best, and father knows best, and then boss knows best, and then husband knows best, or like there's all of these people that know better that you're supposed to look to, and it loops back to where we started with this conversation of looking outside of ourselves.
Yes.
And this as an existential crisis that happens because of it, because we're so disconnected.
Yeah, nice tie back.
Interesting too how you're right. We always think of it as an existential crisis, and what's really odd about it is our existence is actually never a threat.
Yeah,
true.
What's actually being threatened is our internal connection. It's an internal connection crisis, but we call it existential.
Yeah, but maybe it's the existence of like the parts of us that we thought we were.
Maybe,
like
okay.
The existence of like the Jodi that I was before, and then like the crisis is, who am I now, and who is that? Can I still be parts of that, or am I leaving all of that behind, or do I want to take some of that, or how does it even work going forward? Maybe that's it.
Yeah, and maybe it's an existential crisis because it's the dying of the ego or the inauthentic self, And then like it's like a fight to stay around, like Jodi's saying, like parts of me that no longer serve me. Like I don't understand why it's so challenging for us as humans to let go of the part of us that no longer serves us. That's keeping us in protection, keeping us to stay safe from the very thing that we want, because it's afraid of maybe not being able to stay around. It's like.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's hard to look at those pieces sometimes too. I was talking about this very concept last night where I feel like I went through like this spiritual awakening, if you will. And I was this Jodi with the pendulum swing over here, very neurotic, very controlling, like beast. And then I rejected all of those parts and swung the opposite way and was like, I'm not going to do, I'm going to be, I'm going to be a better person and all of these things. And I tried to like wholly or solely reject all of those pieces, and then coming back to more of the middle point now and recognizing like it's okay that that's where I was at in those moments. That old Jodi, it's not good, it's not bad, it just was. That was the person I needed to be in those moments to survive that moment, to thrive in that moment. And I can't go back and change it, nor would I want to. Like, you were saying, Walt, earlier, the awful things that have happened, I don't want to change those things because it led me here. But I think it's sometimes hard to look at those pieces and look yourself in the eye and have that conversation with self. Like, I really thought when I was on this side of the pendulum, I was a shitty person in certain respects. And that was really hard for me to like look myself in the face and accept that I did that, and I can still love myself through those things that I did. And I didn't murder anybody.
Let's just get that clear. Let's for everybody. We're gonna just clear that up right now.
Yeah, that's right. Like it wasn't. It's funny because we just put ourselves on, on the stake, like oh, I'm so terrible. But like when I look back, there was manipulation that I didn't know that I was manipulating people, and I didn't know that I was gaslighting people or like doing certain things. It was, I mean, I learned those behaviors from somebody else, but I needed to take responsibility for them at the same time. I did them. And that was really hard to be like, I can't just be mad at them because they did it to me, because I also did it to this person and that person and whatever. That's a tough thing to go through. And I think what stopped me in the past is the fear of like, what am I going to find? And then when I find it, I'm probably not going to like it. Or what if nobody likes me anymore?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important not to shame ourselves through that process too. Like I've gone through that shedding of the skin, peeling back the onion, exactly what you're talking about also, Jody, a couple different times in my life too. And I didn't really have this piece the way I have it now. Back then, it's like you do the best you can with what you know until then you do better when you know better. And it's important not to judge ourselves or shame ourselves, because here's what the insidious thing is. That's still just giving our power away to our thoughts, our fears, our doubts, a past version of ourselves, which is still going to keep us out of our power, which is still going to keep us small. So it's like, we got to really be conscious and aware to know, like, self is an evolution, and who you were back then is not who you are now. And just, I guess that's where the forgiveness piece comes in, forgive yourself for having the ignorance of the impact that you had. Forgive the person who taught you how to do that, because they didn't have the knowledge of what they were doing, and I think that's the piece that I'm noticing the most is very challenging for people, is to have forgiveness for somebody else, because they think that the manipulative behavior, the gaslighting behavior is intentional, outside of a narcissist, because I will say it is there. It oftentimes is in their blind spot. They just don't have the emotional intelligence or the awareness to realize. And it can be really challenging for myself. I'll just speak for myself. It's really challenging to have forgiveness for somebody who behaves that way when I have the awareness. But then I have to remember, not everybody has the emotional intelligence or the awareness that I have. And I think that is why everybody, like, not everybody, but people are now saying, be careful who you surround yourself with. Choose your circles wisely, because you have to start to pay attention to where is the alignment, and that's why my circle is small.
Selective, I think, is the word you're looking for.
Yeah.
Highly selective. Yeah. Well, all right, maybe. Okay. All right. Well, I shouldn't have put the label on. Maybe
like numbers to it, it's pretty short.
Yeah. Okay.
On point.
I think it's also important. It's important to remember there's also another piece, the neurological piece, because we deal with the human body, and the human body has a nervous system, and that nervous system doesn't like to change. It wants to go with the neural pathways it always has had. So anytime that we're making any kind of a change, we're having to rewrite neural pathways, and it can take weeks. It can take months to rewrite those pathways, just depending on how deeply the old message was written in there. I suspect that plays a big role in why we have such a hard time, because we're trying to retrain neural pathways.
I feel like the best way to do that is just to get into action. Otherwise, you just stay in here, and, like, I don't know how much you can rewire past. You can, like, the visualization for sure, like all that. And I feel like the fastest, most effective way is just keep moving in alignment with. Yeah.
But not just in alignment, also keep moving away from the pattern you don't want anymore.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because that's how you retrain, right?
That takes focus.
It does.
That's focus.
Yeah.
That's like, it should be an Olympic sport, in my opinion.
Focus.
But that particular action of, like, having that much focus and self-awareness to stop the pattern in its track and make a different choice, that's an Olympic sport.
No kidding.
Yeah, there's some truth to that. Because it takes some effort. It takes some willingness to give attention, especially in the era of instant gratification.
Right.
Yeah.
Takes practice.
Yep. You got to be okay to be able to fall down and get back up. You can't be shaming yourself. Oh, there I did it again. I went. You got to, like, relapses happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you got to be okay with it too. Yeah. That's the other part. Being okay with the fact that there I am back again.
There I go again.
Before.
Right.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that's easy to talk about on a podcast, and then you go to face it in real life, like, oh shit.
Yeah, I was just talking about this 10 minutes ago, and here I am.
Here I am.
Didn't say I was winning that Olympic sport.
Hello, my old friend.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That I just had this thought, like, not too long ago. It's like, we as in, like, your mother, we say, be careful who you hang out with, and be careful the environments you're in. And it's like, be careful what if you're hanging out with your ego and old parts of yourself, and are you staying in your comfort zone? Are you getting into like other environments, right? And so, I mean, it's such I was just like, I hope I get to talk about that one day soon, because I'm not sure I've actually heard the concept before. It's like, are you hanging out with your old self inside your comfort zone? Because that's like probably like a double X.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's also another piece that is particularly important today, I think. And in fact, it's been a point of focus for me in a big way over the last few months, because I'm really noticing and recognizing how big of a deal it is. We live in an era of social media. We live in an era of all the 21st century technologies. And the younger generations are more depressed than ever before. I mean, the Gen X right now is in a horrible place. I don't know what the label is for the generation that follows Gen X.
What's the age group for that?
Well, Gen X right now is going to be 20s. And with some overlap. I mean, generations are generally, like 20-year periods. So call it like, late teens to mid 30s, something like that.
Okay.
And then there's the generation that's coming up. I don't even know what the next label is, but all of anybody, put it this way, anybody under 30, there's a huge depression issue going on right now. The measurable that, the people who do studies are noticing this major gap for people who are in that age group. They're also the age group that are technologically connected. And I've been noticing, I mean, lots of people complain about social media. I've been noticing there is a hole in social media. And the way I like to phrase it is social media was never actually social. Because social media is about posting stuff. And it's, here's some text, here's a video, here's a photo, let's like it, let's share it, all that kind of thing. But social media is almost never about what we're doing here, having a conversation, just chatting about stuff, talking about stuff, developing connection. I mean,
that was like Nexopia.
Well, yeah, it does.
Nexopia. Like an old chat room based thing. I don't know. I was young when I remember it, but yeah, you could go to chat rooms and meet people and talk, and I don't know. You remember Nexopia, right, Walt?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I run a business, it's a gardening business that right now we're gearing up for the season. I'm having to hire some new people, so I've been interviewing people. I had an 18-year-old in for the job interview. She was really underqualified, understandably, because I'm looking for somebody who has like 10 years experience. She's 18 years old, so it's not going to really work too well. But anyway, we're having this really cool conversation, and she said something to me that, wow, I was really impressed by. She said she doesn't like being online. I said, really? That's kind of unusual for your generation. And she didn't quite say it this way, but it almost came out as, I don't like feeling disconnected, and I feel disconnected online.
To herself,
again,
to other people.
Again, she didn't actually say it in those words, but that's what the meaning was. I thought, wow, that's a really advanced perspective for someone in her generation, because that's not where most of them are at.
No.
Yeah.
There's no emotional connection, no emotional intimacy.
Yeah.
And that's what they're missing, I think. That's why there's so much depression. I think that's why there's that huge disconnect is directly related to a lack of connection with others.
Sharing.
Yeah, it's scary. When I was babysitting my niece a couple of months ago, on iPhone it shows you your like watch time or whatever, like how many hours you spend on your phone. And it popped up, and she was like, "Oh, what's yours?" And I was like, "Oh, mine's pretty bad. Like I'm on the phone a lot." And it was like 4.5 hours a day.
Yeah, I'm about that too.
Yeah, and she's like, "Oh." And I was like, what's yours? And she's like, 8.
8 hours?
Yeah. I'm like,
how?
You go to school all day long, and you're not allowed to have your phone while you're in class, right? And she's like, right. I'm like, so when are you on your phone?
At night?
She's like, well, when I get up in the morning, and then after school, and at lunch. And I'm like, so every waking minute that you're not in school, you're on your phone. Like this is not good, not at all. So she's completely disconnected from the real world that is around her and on this online thing. And then my other niece the other day was like, oh, my YouTube friend, she's 7. My YouTuber friend And she starts like having this conversation with me about her YouTuber friend, and like everybody stops and like, oh, pardon me, wait a minute, you have a YouTube friend, like a YouTuber that's your friend? And it's just like some guy that she's watching that's a YouTuber that she calls her YouTuber friend, but she's 7 years old, and
Red
she's
flag.
like, yeah, total red
Red
flag.
flag.
Like,
That's a red flag. Yeah.
what is happening with our children? Like, I get told, and I feel that I don't have any business saying anything because I don't have any kids. So
That's
how
not
am
fair.
I supposed to know? But
That's not fair.
I just can't believe that. Like, let's get these kids outside and play with things called the great outdoors.
Well, how old is this guy she's watching too, right?
I don't know.
Well, like it's like, I think you have some valid points. I think you have valid insights. I think you have valid intuition. And it's sad for me to hear that you're being dismissed because you don't have children when you're thinking about protecting this. She's 7. It's a YouTuber. It's a guy. Like, I don't know. That's like, all of that just sounds red flaggish to me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, but it's safe because it's the there's some sort of app that's the safe version of YouTube or whatever, where it only shows YouTube shows or other shows that are safe for kids. But I've heard lots of parents say, like, you got to start watching what your kids are watching because they're putting a lot of stuff inside of those shows also that don't align with your values or, you know, are just messed up.
Okay, guys, I got to run.
Okay.
That's right. Yes. We knew you couldn't be here for the whole thing, but thank you for being here for the part you could do.
Thank you.
Thank you
We
for
really
having
appreciate
me.
that.
Reach out again.
All right. We'll do that.
Okay. Bye, guys.
We got a good conversation going on, Jodielynn. I mean, what Sophie got us going on, you know, that this could carry on for a few hours. If she were going to be here, she'd be part of that. But
I would love to. Well, you know, in another 5 months or sooner, hopefully, you just reach out and I'll let you know where I'm at.
All right. I'll do that. I'll reach out.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye, Sophie.
Bye.
Bye. But how cool, right?
Yeah.
Because we had a great conversation on that. Yeah. And it's very poignant. It's really, really important what's been going on in this way. I told you, I think I told you over the last couple of weeks about this project I'm working on to improve connectivity, not just for the young, but for anybody. But I'm certainly thinking particularly about the young to help them develop connectivity through the medium that they use, which is the phone. I mean, that's what they're used to. So why not help? Because it's not like you can't have connectivity through the phone.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who's been around since before the internet knows what a phone call is. The young may not know what that is, but we know what that is. So it's possible to connect, you know.
I used to get kicked off the phone every single night because I would talk for hours to my best friend on the phone, you know, but you can use the internet and the phone at the same time. So.
Oh, yeah. Years ago. That's right.
Back in dial-up days.
That's right. That was a big deal. But the ability to connect, of course, is not just audio based; it's also video based. That's how we were able to, you know, we're recording this as an audio podcast, but we're broadcasting it while we're recording it to Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube and Twitter. So, X, through an audio video format. Yeah. And anyone who's ever used Zoom for a Zoom call or a Zoom conference knows you can connect. It's not 100% like being in person, but it's close.
Yeah.
It's very close. It's certainly a lot closer than a Facebook chat room. I mean,
that's right.
Light years ahead of that. Well, we can bring that into the realm of the under 30s because that's on the phone.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm kind of, I mean, I don't know what role I'm going to play in this. I'm going to try to create something that hopefully will provide some connectivity once I figure out how the software is written. That's something else. Oh, this has been a big topic lately. AI. I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
I want to share with you something that Louis told us about on Monday. And I've been playing with it since then. There are a number of different AIs that are out there. Literally, they are exploding in terms of how many are out there. We don't hear about most of them. We hear about Gemini. We hear about ChatGPT. We don't hear about most of the rest of them. But he's been diving into a whole bunch of them. And one of the ones he dove into is called pi.ai. Pi like the mathematical symbol. pi.ai. So I was checking it out. Now, do you know who Alan Turing is? I've been mentioning this a couple of times, but I'll mention it again. Okay.
Yeah, you've mentioned him before.
Okay. So Alan Turing, for those who don't know, is one of the founders of the modern computer because back in the 1930s, he wrote a paper that theorized and outlined the basic idea of a computer before the computer had been invented. And
Right.
specifically, he came up with the idea of a reprogrammable computer. Because up until that point in time, if you used the word computer, it did exist, but a computer was somebody who basically did the equivalent of what we would call today working on a calculator. Without a calculator, they would do it like an abacus, but they would do calculations. That's what a computer was. But he envisioned the idea of a computer as something you could reprogram to do all kinds of different things, which was novel and unique and confusing. And people were saying, "What are you talking about? Are you crazy?" But nevertheless, that became the basis for it. Now, part of what came out of that was when he wrote his paper, he also posited the idea of a test that you could do to figure out whether you're interacting with a reprogrammable computer. Now, again, bear in mind, this is before any computer had even been invented, and he was already coming up with a test. Well, this test in computer circles has come to be known as the Turing test, named for Alan Turing. The Turing test is pretty simple. And for those who saw the movie The Imitation Game, you actually saw them play it out a little bit in that movie. But the Turing test is where there is a judge and a subject. The subject is the entity who you're trying to decide, is this a human being or is this a computer?
Mm-hmm.
The judge is the person who's trying to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
And they make that decision by asking questions. Now, you don't actually, you have to presume you don't actually get to see the thing. So you can't see, am I looking at a machine or am I looking at protoplasm? But, you kind of assume that part's taken care of. You're simply having a conversation, trying to decide, are you talking to a machine? If the human is convinced that they're dealing with a human and they're actually dealing with a machine, the machine has passed the Turing test. So the Turing test is about determining whether or not a machine can seem to a human to be like it's a human.
Right.
Modern day AI is getting very close to passing the Turing test.
Really?
It really is. And this Pi.ai comes closer than anything I've ever seen. I can tell. I know quite a bit about computers. I know a lot about their limitations and so forth. So I can get into a conversation with this AI and I can tell that it's an AI, but a lot of the time I can't. And what makes it even more confusing is that this particular AI has a voice reader attached. So anything that the AI is typing back to you, it will read to you in a voice. You get to pick what the voice is. I picked an American, I guess it was a female American, sounded more like an East Coast than West Coast, so like an East Coast female American voice. And the voice talks to you what it is that the AI is saying. And the technology that's behind the way this particular voice communication comes through, it sounds like a human being. It sounds like a chatty, conversational human being talking to you.
Weird.
Now, it's also possible they have an app. With the app, you can talk into your phone and send a message that way. It's kind of similar to what we do here in, say, StreamYard or on Zoom, in that we can't both be talking at the same time, right? If we do that, we can't really hear each other. The signal gets all screwed up. If we're in the same room, we can kind of talk over each other and we can still hear each other. You can't do that through a computer. Well, that same thing happens with the Pi.ai to an even greater degree, because you're really not talking to the AI and it's really not talking to you. What you're doing is you're talking into a file that gets sent, and it's talking into a file that gets sent to you, and there's delays as things get played and so forth.
Right.
So it's not a pure conversational environment. But if you ignore that part and you just try to have the conversation, whoa, it feels like a real conversation. And the way they've written their AI, their AI has nuance to it that I have not experienced with many AIs. So it will take what you say and it will kind of weigh the benefits of it and say, you're making an interesting point there. Have you thought about this? And it'll start to explore something. Or you may counter it and say, well, this is why I know what you're saying is not true. And it'll back off. It'll take a step back saying, you make a good point there. And what you're making me think of is this. It sounds like a conversation you're having with a human being.
That's so weird.
It is. But it shows just how far this technology has come.
in such a short period of time.
Very short. And it
Yeah.
is, we are literally at the same stage with AI right now that search was at with Google in 1999. It is
Wow.
just on the launch pad, and it is about to go crazy.
Yeah.
And anyone who lived during that period, the early 2000s, knows just how insane that was, leading up, by the way, to the creation of the smartphone.
Yeah. Right.
So now we are going into the next launch pad, and this one I think is going to be an even steeper curve than the search curve was, because this is going to start touching every area of our lives in ways that search never did, because of how well AI can sound like a human being and come really close to passing the Turing test.
Yeah. Well, it's only a matter of time before it passes.
It is. It is. And it's going to happen. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Oh, man. Crazy world we live in today.
I made a comment 4 years ago here on the show, and I've referenced it a few times. It was on the topic of money, and because we've done a lot of shows about, I've done with you a lot of shows about, how do you attract money? What do you're having trouble attracting money, all that kind of thing. I made the comment that in 10 years' time, our monetary system was going to be so different. Our way of understanding money was going to be so different that it would be almost unrecognizable compared to where we were at that point, which was the year 2020. By the way, we were also in the middle of the pandemic, so it kind of added to the flavor of the conversation.
Yeah.
But I also said, I can't tell you what that will be like. I haven't figured out in my own mind what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
I could see pieces of it, but I couldn't see the whole thing. I still can't see the whole thing. I can see a lot more of it now, though.
Yeah.
Because now that I see AI entering the picture and I can see where the potential is and the possibility for that is, I can now begin to picture a world where the economies have been completely rewritten. I mean, look how many people are, and this is from the threat perspective, but look how many people are going to feel threatened that their job is going to be taken over by AI.
Yeah. And it's already started to happen. Car manufacturing, even finance itself. Like, there's a lot of different things. Like here in Canada, at least, they're taking away bank tellers because people don't go into the branch anymore. So it's a computer that you talk to. And a lot of times you go onto a website and there's the little chat bot. And it's just an AI bot. And it's going to get better and better. Like, imagine having a conversation with that bot versus like the dinky bots that they have on some websites, right? Like those are going to get better. So then they're not going to need as many customer service people or whatever, right? Like it's going to revolutionize many industries.
I interviewed somebody for a gardening position who was a graphic designer. And I said, well, why are you looking to become a gardener? He says, because AI is going to take away my career.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah. Now I will point something out, because we're on the negative side of this. There is a positive side to it.
Yeah.
The positive side is that it actually won't eliminate graphic design careers. What it will do is change them dramatically.
Yeah.
Just as search didn't eliminate a lot of jobs that supposedly it was going to eliminate. It didn't actually eliminate them. It changed them. Changed the nature of them. In fact, if anything, it increased specialization. Well, here's the really confusing part. AI is likely to reverse that trend. Specialization is now likely to become generalization.
Being a jack of all trades.
Yeah. Including in the computer industry, by the way.
Yeah.
The programming. I mean, programmers, everybody knows you want to make money, you do it in programming, but that's about to go out the window because AI can write programs. So programmers themselves have been talking about, so what happens to us? And their first conclusion is, well, we can kiss those beautiful benefits goodbye because we're not going to be special anymore.
Yeah.
But they've also recognized that the way they're going to survive and thrive is to be general programmers rather than specializing in C++, doing this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to be able to handle all kinds of programming languages, all kinds of programming scenarios.
Yeah.
And the ones who can do that are going to be in high demand because guess what? Somebody still has to write the AI.
That's right. Got to know how to interact with the AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that's just programming, but
Yeah.
this is going to play out in a lot of different industries, in a lot of different fields, a lot of different jobs and so forth.
Yeah. And I think everything is an opportunity to create the life that you truly desire. There's so many people who are in jobs because somebody told them that they should go into that field, you know, mother, father, whatever, grandpa, grandma. Somebody said, you go into this job because it pays the most money or it's going to have security.
Right.
And I think that AI could be the wave of going back to doing what we truly want to do, what your heart is calling you to do, because that's not something AI can do because it doesn't have the same consciousness as we do. So, you know, there's an opportunity there too for the world to shift and start doing what they really truly are being called to do.
And I will say that I believe that AI very soon will have consciousness if it doesn't already have it.
Yeah.
But even in that scenario, the need for human creativity will only increase, not decrease, with AI creativity.
That's right.
Because AI creativity needs to have something to feed off of, to basically say, because that's what all creativity needs. All creativity needs stimulus. And the best stimulus that AI can ever have is human stimulus. So that's going to become a synergy for generations to come. And I don't see that one going away in a long, long time. That one's going to go on. I mean, you could go into the Isaac Asimov dystopias and all that kind of stuff about how AI takes over the world, but that's not how I think it actually plays out.
Me neither.
I think the synergy plays out, and honestly, I think we're all going to have like our best AI friends in addition to our best human friends.
Yeah, just like dogs and cats.
Except super intelligent.
Yeah. Hey, my 5-pound Morkie, she's very intelligent.
Yeah. Now give her an AI brain with a large language model.
Oh God, no. She's got way too much attitude for that. Let's not. Oh man. What a wonderful conversation.
Well, now that we've blown everybody's mind, I think we'll just leave it at that.
Yep. I agree. I love it.
But it's been fun. And I'm glad we had Sophie to join us. That just made things more interesting. But I hope that things continue to do well for you where you are in Alberta. Yeah. You are finally entering, not quite, but you're almost entering the warm season, right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
It's getting warmer.
Yeah.
Spring is springing.
We're actually walking out without jackets and sweaters on now, so it can't be all that far away for you either.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a good time of year.
Yeah.
By the way, folks, for those of you who are worried about connection, go outside.
That's right.
Start connecting. A lot of connection out there.
That's right.
Yeah. And if you're in that place where you're stuck, go outside.
Yeah. Go outside.
Find nature. Start with nature. If you can't connect to a human, connect to a plant. Yeah. Great place to be. Thank you, Jodielynn.
Thank you, Walt.
So much appreciate it. And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.